go. This next part, as we start we're going to start swirling around various groups, organizations, and people, and it's going to be quite interesting. There's going to be a lot of crisscrossing wires as we go through this. Now, I'm going to do my best to try and make sure that everything is not necessarily in order. I can't do that. That would be impossible. But I'm going to try and make sure everything is concise and cleanly connected as I possibly can. You guys know me. My favorite thing to do is to connect dots. So I'm going to do the best I can. So as we go through this, and again, this is not going to be an end-all, be-all list. There's no possible way I could do that. I'm just one man, can't do it. So I'm just going to try and pick out the important things as we go through this specific series. But as we move forward, I'm going to try and make as many callbacks to specific people or groups as we move forward. So I'm going to do my best to try and make it as easy as possible. So episode 13, we left off with Lawrence Rockefeller, and we talked about how he was involved with the Marx Hubbard and stuff like that. And we'll get to him later, but we're going to go ahead and move over to the other brother, Stephen Clark Rockefeller. Aren't they just wonderful looking men? Oh, I tell you what, they're just amazing. I still think Lawrence looks like the father of, I can't remember his name. I showed a picture last time, but I can't remember his name. The guy from The Fly in Jurassic Park. Anyways, that's just a side thing. We don't need to worry about that. But we're going to be talking about Stephen Clark Rockefeller, the bald one over there on the left. Stephen is the son of Nelson Rockefeller. If the name or face sounds familiar, it's because Nelson served 4 terms as the governor of New York, and he was also appointed vice president by Gerald Ford in 1974. That's right, we had a Rockefeller who was indeed a vice president of the United States. So we got him. Nelson was also the grandson of John D. Rockefeller Sr., who was the founder of Standard Oil, and Nelson was the son of John D. Rockefeller Jr., or I'll refer to him as John Jr. Now, just a little quick note about Sr., John Sr. We're not really going to go over much about him. That's going into other stuff we don't necessarily need to, but just a quick note about what he believes. He was raised in quite the Baptist background, right? Quite in the Baptist household. But the thing is he held a very unique style of belief back in the day, at least, because he was a part of, I think it was the Second Great Awakening. If you guys ever heard about those, there's the first, second, third, and fourth Great Awakenings. As you know, whenever you see anything like awakening, that's usually a warning sign, because even at the Second Great Awakening, what they were teaching was people needed to use their talents and their profits in order to help create the kingdom of God on earth. Now, what does that sound like? Sounds familiar, right? That's the same stuff that they're teaching in the NAR Church, the New Apostolic Reformation, where we are to prepare the earth for the kingdom to come down. That's the same stuff they were teaching back then. That's the same stuff that John D. Rockefeller Sr. believed in as well, so much so that a lot of his stuff goes into the philanthropy stuff that we see today that has to do with helping create the environment that we see today. And he was also a heavy donator to not only the Roman Catholic Church, but also to the Southern Baptist Convention as well. He donated a lot of money to those. So we're kind of already seeing that mystery religion coming from the senior, John Sr. So again, we're not necessarily going to go into him. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on what he believed as well. But Nelson Rockefeller was the son of John Jr. Here's the strapping fellow of John D. Rockefeller Jr. right there. Now, John Jr. was a key contributor to the establishment of the UN, with many donations to the League of Nations, which was an international group formally established in 1920, which came out of the 1919 Paris Peace Conference. So the League of Nations was what the UN was before, and they got folded into the UN from there. Now, the League of Nations eventually transitioned into the UN in 1946, a year after the UN was officially formed in 1945. It's also important to note that while the U.S. was never an official member with the League of Nations, the Rockefeller involvement in both the U.S. government and the League of Nations allowed the connection to basically be there, just not on the books type of thing. We see that all the time. Oh, we're not officially there, but you're there. Now, the Rockefellers made considerable monetary donations and had heavy influence within the economic, financial, and transit department of the League of Nations. Imagine that, the Rockefellers being a part of the economic and financial systems involved with that. Now, John Jr. donated over $8 million in December of 1946 for purchasing the land that the UN sits on today in New York. The UN headquarters sits on land in New York because of the donation by Mr. John Jr. Rockefeller. So if we take a look at this, it says John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s deep interest in international relations. I wonder why. Oh, that's right. He wants to bring about the kingdom of God, right? Was reflected by his many contributions directly to international causes. Perhaps most outstanding in this field was his gift of $8.5 million in December of 1946 for the purchase of the land for the permanent home of the United Nations in New York. Goes on to say, it is my belief, there we go, that this city affords an environment uniquely fitted to the task of the United Nations, and that the people of New York would like to have the United Nations here permanently. He said in making the gift, if this properly can be useful to you in meeting the great responsibility entrusted to you by the people of the world, it will be a source of infinite satisfaction to me and my family. I'm sure it would be, because you benefited greatly from this. Didn't you, John Jr.? So this came after donating $2 million to the League of Nations to create the library at the League of Nations, which eventually became the UN office at Geneva when the transfer of assets to the UN took place. So before John Jr. bought the property that in New York that the UN HQ sits on today, he donated $2 million to the League in order to build a library there, which eventually became the UN office at Geneva. And according to past UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, that $2 million donation still nets the UN $150,000 every 2 years in interest. So because of the interest, they're still profiting off of it. So if we take a look at this, this is from 2012. It says the Library of the United Nations office at Geneva dedicated a new reading room to American philanthropist John D. Rockefeller Jr. on September 10th to commemorate the 85th anniversary of Rockefeller's $2 million endowment to fund the library's expansion. This library contributes to the Rockefeller Foundation's goal of informing citizens who can make a difference in our world, said UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon. Let us carry forward this mission for another 85 years and beyond. Please, no. Please, no. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go home. We don't need that. That's for sure. So we're already seeing influence when it comes to the League of Nations as well as the UN. Basically, the Rockefellers were the ones who helped fund this thing to push it even faster. Now, I'm sure it would have gotten done if they weren't involved, but because they were involved, it helped speed things up. So that's important to understand. So you've got the Rockefellers who believe either in the NAR type of thing or just the straight New Age stuff, which we already see with Lawrence and we're going to see with Stephen. Their goal, of course, is to bring about this globalist, this one world order type of thing. And then, of course, later with the New Age guys to bring about the global religion. And we'll kind of see that in a minute. But this is about structuring this out which, as we know, is structuring into a beast system right now. And as we know, who is the one who helps develop this beast system and then get squashed when it's time? It's mystery religion. That's what she's doing. That's why we continue to see most of the mystery New Age principles involved with these organizations and whatnot, because she's the one that leading them. She's the one who has seduced the kings of the world to bring this forward. So that's how all of this is interconnected with mystery religion. And the Rockefellers are very much involved in this belief system as well. So here's where things can get messy. So I'm going to try and make it simple. There is a lot of stuff on this, and I tried to cut it down into clean and concise bits to make it as easy as possible. So hang with me. We're going to do this. Woodrow Wilson. Hopefully we have no Woodrow Wilson fans watching. I'll tell you what. Woodrow Wilson was a puppet. Imagine that. Imagine that, a U.S. president being a puppet. Who would believe that, right? Selection, not election. And here's a little bit of proof of that right now. Woodrow Wilson was indeed bought and paid for by the Rockefellers and a wealthy elite banker by the name of Bernard Baruch. Baruch or Baruch? I think it's Baruch. Bernard Baruch. Wilson would be required, he was seen having a meeting with these fellas. Wilson would be required to support the projected Federal Reserve and income tax legislation that was coming through, as well as make sure that he heeded the advice on a European war if one was to break out. And this was 1913. Keep that in mind, because what happened in 1914? Interesting how if a European war managed to break out. So because Wilson was on board with this, he was then magically elected president. Imagine that. And when he was elected president, the Federal Reserve Act came through, was signed. The Revenue Act of 1913 came about, which is the wonderful income tax that we see happening today. And World War I began in Europe in 1914. It's just kind of amazing how everything that Woodrow Wilson said, if you want to be president, we'll give you that, but you're going to have to do these things for us too. And if a war happens to break out, you're going to need to follow our directions on that. It's all orchestrated. Everything that we see, even all the way back then, it was all orchestrated. It's amazing how that happens, right? So if you remember, also in part 13, Wilson was a major supporter of eugenics, including the Rockefeller-funded programs like Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory. And Wilson's top advisor was a guy by the name of Colonel Edward M. House, who was assigned to guide Wilson through the process of keeping these acts, the Federal Reserve and the Reserve Income Tax Act, those things. He was the one to help guide the process of keeping those acts on track through Congress, which, of course, they did. Through World War I, which the Rockefellers just happened to know about it, through World War I, the Rockefellers are known to have made over $200 million in profit. Now imagine that. The same people who happened to predict that a world war was about to break out in Europe actually profited from it. And not to mention, they were part of the group that wanted the Federal Reserve and the income tax and everything to come to pass as well. It's amazing how they just happened to be involved in all that. And so Wilson was their guy. He was their stooge. He was their puppet. They put him in. He was selected, not elected. And then, of course, they gave him the top advisor of House to make sure that everything was going through. But it doesn't end there. There was another thing to come out of World War I, which was already mentioned, the League of Nations. At the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, Wilson unveiled his 14 points, which he's famous for these 14 points, with the last one being for a general association of nations. Wilson didn't actually write those 14 points. It was actually the Rockefeller-appointed Edward House, their messenger and keeper of Wilson, who wrote those points, the same points that helped bring about the League of Nations, which, as we know, eventually folded into the United Nations, which that was also supported by the Rockefellers as well. Boy, the same people that continue to scream about democracy, it's your choice, which I always tell you guys, democracy is a made up illusion. It's there to give you the belief that you have choice, but you actually don't. Even going all the way back to 1913, you can see how individuals were hand selected to make sure things got done that were planned. Even something like World War I. We haven't even touched World War II. I don't know if we're going to get there. I don't know. We'll see. But even World War I, imagine that. So we've got all of this unfolding up to the League of Nations. Wilson's nothing but a puppet. Rockefeller's in control through their man House. Now formed in 1919, but officially established on July 29th. I put down the wrong date. Formed in 1919, but officially established July 29th, 1921. There we go. In New York was the Council on Foreign Relations. Interesting. Same time that the League of Nations was created, right? Well, not exactly. The founders of the Council on Foreign Relations include none other than Edward House, as well as the first president being a guy by the name of John W. Davis, who was J.P. Morgan's personal attorney when he was still alive, chairman of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, who also helped coordinate World War I. And he was also the trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation from 1922 to 1939. So we've got, again, the League of Nations, funded, produced by the Rockefellers, and now we've also at the same time, we got the Council on Foreign Relations, funded, produced, and controlled by the Rockefellers. Now, when John Jr. donated that $8 million for the UN HQ, there was another deal involved with that. Would you believe it? Nelson Rockefeller, on behalf of the UN, went to the real estate developer who owned the land that the UN wanted, which was surrounded by abandoned, rundown real estate, like old abandoned slaughterhouses and storage houses and whatnot. And when the deal was finalized, David Rockefeller, another one, bought up the surrounding land and benefited as when the UN moved in, all of the property value around it went up. Kind of convenient, right? Now, David Rockefeller is another son of John Jr., and he's a different monster. We're not going to go into him. We'd be here all night if we were to go into him. He's a whole different thing. So we'll put him in your pocket. We'll get to him later. But after John Jr. provided the money for the UN land purchase, David Rockefeller, while being a trustee of Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, bought the surrounding land and profited off of it. So to put it a little bit easier, John Jr. was going to fund the purchase of the land for the UNHQ in New York to sit upon. So Nelson Rockefeller went to the landowner and finalized the deal with him. At the same time, David Rockefeller, another one of John Jr.'s sons, while he was with Carnegie, bought up the surrounding land around the UN land. And so when the UN went in there, all the property value went up and David Rockefeller made a boatload of money. They just happen to be so good at making sure that they're always in the right place at the right time. Kind of interesting. Did I mention that David bought the property from the same real estate owner that sold John Jr. the UN land? It was all the same property, guys, so he made out with it too. Now, Nelson Rockefeller helped the UN with the land deal, but was also a part of the U.S. delegation at the gathering that marked the founding of the UN, known as the 1945 Conference on International Organization. And there it is. Taking place in 1945 in San Francisco. It was considered the event that brought the world to San Francisco, and that's what they deemed it. And this is the United Nations Conference on International Organization. Nelson Rockefeller was one of the U.S. delegates there. That was a very, very, very bad event that took place. So we got kind of an idea of how just how involved the Rockefellers are in all this. World War I, Federal Reserve, the League of Nations, the United Nations, land deals, all these things. That's just a small snippet. Like I said, I can't cover it all, and a lot of it doesn't necessarily have to do with the series that we're doing. So while it might be interesting, it doesn't necessarily fit for this. But we can see just how orchestrated all this stuff is to make sure that this specific agenda, this mystery, enticed agenda, is to get through. And it's being heavily done by these guys. So, talked about John Jr., we talked about Nelson, we talked about all that. So if we switch back to Nelson's son, Stephen, if you guys don't remember, here's Stephen Clark Rockefeller. If we switch back to him, we see the pursuit of not only the one world order that his family prior wanted, but we also see a heavy pursuit with New Age beliefs now being added to it. So, stemming from the spiritual and political ideals that originated from the Club of Rome, which began in 1968 at the Rockefeller estate in Bellagio, Italy. Amazing that the Club of Rome first started at the Rockefeller estate. Okay, so here, just a quick little note. There's some people, normally I wouldn't throw this out there, but I'm just because I just maybe give you guys something to think about, or maybe you can find something about it. But there's some people that claim that this Rockefeller estate in Italy, where the Club of Rome was meeting, was in fact a Masonic lodge for Freemasonry. I wouldn't put it past them, but I can't find anything that really verifies that. And so I'm not going to sit here and put my hat on it and say this is what it was. Now, just because it's Freemasonry, which they very well, you guys can go from there. I just wanted to put it out there, but I do want to put this stipulation on there saying that I can't actually 100% verify that. So I'm not going to hang my hand on that, or my hat on that. I don't know why I would hang my hand anyways. So just a little note on that. So, but stemming from the club's ideals, Stephen Rockefeller joined up with fellow New Age globalists, Maurice Strong, who was a member of the Club of Rome, and he was also one of the trustees of the Fetzer Institute. Remember, we talked about that. And Mikhail Gorbachev, also a Club of Rome member, and they got together to create the Earth Charter. So here's Maurice Strong. It's spelled Maurice, but it's pronounced Maurice. Maurice Strong and Mikhail Gorbachev. Now, these two guys, we're going to talk about them much more later on. They pop up a lot in this stuff. So you're going to want to hang on to their names because they're heavily involved, and their name is all over bringing about the New Age stuff. They are heavy into that stuff. So we'll get to them, but Stephen Clark Rockefeller joined up with these guys to create the Earth Charter, which is basically formatted with the ideals that the Club of Rome wanted to bring about, the climate change type of stuff. We got to bring about the sustainable development, circular economy. That's another thing that we'll kind of get into a little bit. So Stephen, just a little bit of background on Stephen here. It ain't good. Stephen, he attended the Union Theological Seminary, where he obtained a Master of Divinity degree, as well as a Doctor of Philosophy degree from Columbia University. Now, a little bit of throwback. Remember, Columbia University features the Spirituality Mind-Body Institute, who is partnered with the Rockefeller Philanthropy, and they're the ones that are helping to introduce the cell curriculum, as well as teach the teachers in order to basically bring in this spiritual New Age belief system into the classroom as well. So again, we're seeing how all this stuff is intertwined together. They're all friends. It's all a club. You've heard that before. It's all a club. all to help bring about these New Age beliefs and introduce it through education. Hang on to that because that's part of the theme on this. So with Stephen is also a professor emeritus of religion at Middlebury College in Vermont, where he also served as college dean and chairman of the religious department. So we're seeing a heavy dose of the religion and the spirituality stuff, but it doesn't stop there. Stephen's focus came from his love of Asian culture, where he studied and practiced none other than Buddhism. Man, how did we go from Baptist, who believed in the NAR stuff way before the NAR was even around, to Buddhism? It's a mystery, isn't it? He was also editor on some wonderful Christian classic books. Let's take a look at a few of these. Oh, look at that. Christ and the Bodhisattva. Wow. Yeah, that's right. He was editor. You can see right there, edited by Donald S. Lopez Jr. and Stephen C. Rockefeller. He had another one too. Spirit and Nature. Why the environment is a religious issue. I'm going to read that again, but slower, because I want to make sure you guys are piecing this together. Spirit and nature. Why the environment is a religious issue. But I was told that they're just using climate change because they want to control us. That's what the surface level wants to tell you. All these SDG things, the Sustainable Development Goals, all the climate stuff that they're pushing to bring about these beast system like programs and policies and everything is right there. It's a spiritual issue. All those things have to do with bringing about this beast system led by none other than Mystery. She's the one who rides the beast system in. And here it is. Spirit and Nature, Why the Environment is a Religious Issue. Edited by Stephen C. Rockefeller. This is one of the main things that I'm really trying to make the whole point of this series, is to make sure that we are not lost, blinded, or staring at the wrong problem. Everything that we see happening, and I know some people might look at this and go, dude, you're crazy. Where's the tinfoil hat? Which we haven't done it in a while. I think it's time we bring it over. Everything that we are seeing happen right now, even going all the way back to the early 1900s, and it goes before that too, I'm just starting at that point, is controlled, it's orchestrated, and it's led by mystery religion. People are hand selected and given orders by people above them to do certain things to make sure that certain programs, policies, and organizations get through, get developed, come online. And it all has to do with a mystery, religious, spiritual aspect. And when we specifically mention the climate religion, which I know that kind of is a joke that kind of gets thrown around, it's the climate religion, they worship the climate. It's legit. It's legit, but it's not legit in the idea of politics. It's legit in the idea of spiritual warfare with a woman riding the beast. These are real things. These weird things that people call conspiracy theories, that call tinfoil hat moments, that some people like to say, oh, it's just people get excited whenever they can bring out the shovel and start going through rabbit holes, but none of it is legit. This stuff is legit. The thing is you won't read about any of this in a history book. You won't. When I do my research, I specifically, as I'm going through and finding this stuff, will go and look at specific things like Encyclopedia Britannica and some of these other more like structural owned things just to see what they're saying. And none of it's in there. It's not because they don't want people to know that. Remember the classic saying of history is written by the victors? It's true. It's true. History is written by the victors. Yeah. This is legit stuff. And it's spiritual warfare stuff. And so I'm really trying to make sure that that's the point of this. And we can see these Rockefellers and they have their grubby hands on everything and the beliefs that they hold to. Proof's in the pudding. Pudding's in the proof. And so we're seeing with Stephen the unity factor, the a la carte spirituality factor, the global order factor, and the climate factor. He's involved with all of that, especially with the Earth Charter with Maurice and Mikhail Gorbachev. In 1987, the Brundtland Commission, which that's probably something most people haven't heard of. If you have heard of it, awesome. Bonus points for you. See Caterlin, she's got cookies for you in the back. But in 1987, the Brundtland Commission released a report called Our Common Future. Wait a second. Where have I heard that before? Oh, that's right. The UN SDGs. Our Common Future. But this is from 1987 from the Brundtland Commission. Interesting. They released a report card called Our Common Future with guidance for a new normal, or back then it was called a new worldview, to transition to sustainable development. Their words, not mine. Yes, this report is a guiding document for those UN Sustainable Development Goals. Well, that report carried over into 1992's Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, where the discussion of the Earth Charter first took place. An informal independent Earth Charter was formed in 1997 with Maurice Strong, Mikhail Gorbachev, and Stephen C. Rockefeller, as well as others at the helm, to develop the official charter. So this was in 1997. Rio de Janeiro. You got Strong there in the middle. You got Stephen over there on the far left. You got Gorbachev there on the right, along with some others. One of the others is actually a man by the name of Federico Mayer. He was involved with one of the basically founding this thing, and we're going to run into that name later. We're not going to talk about him now, so put him in your pocket, and we'll talk about him in another episode, but I will make reference to that guy as well. He was a part of this at the same time. Now, in March of 2000, a global consensus came about in UNESCO. Imagine that. HQ, which was in Paris, and the Earth Charter was formally launched in June of 2000 at the Peace Palace in the Netherlands. This was June of 2000 at the Peace Palace, where it was officially signed and brought about. And you'll see the logo of the Earth Charter. It's supposed to be a dove surrounding the Earth, but you'll also notice it's also a hand holding the Earth as well. That is legit symbolism. As we know, God holds the Earth in the palm of his hand. God holds the universe in the palm of his hand. But this has to do with the Christ consciousness, the we are gods element. Seriously, because they believe that they now hold the earth in the palm of their hand, which again has to do with we are gods of the earth. So that is a legit symbolism right there of showing what is leading this organization. The Earth Charter is a collection of elites, many who believe in the New Age, many of who, not many who, but many of who believe in the New Age climate religion built to navigate organizations and governments into the SDGs. The Earth Charter is also heavily involved with UNESCO and the UN Education Branch to help with education and spiritual revolution, or as we would know it, the new normal. I've talked about this before. I found a whole bunch of information on one of the plans from UNESCO. I'll probably do that in a regular Watchtower episode. I probably won't do it on this one because it doesn't directly affect it. But this is it goes way deeper than even I had any understanding. It's insane. But this is part of the new normal, and we've talked about the new normal before. This isn't just some catchphrase that came out in 2020 when all this stuff started happening. Just like people know the Build Back Better thing, that's not just some catchphrase for the Biden administration. That stuff's been used for decades in global political movements as well. Somebody in Brazil used it. Somebody in China used it. Somebody over in the EU used it as well. These aren't just catchphrases. These are actual agendas that come out. And the new normal comes from a new worldview. It has to do with establishing this global order that they want. And from there, they have to do it through education. They have to do it through education, not only with the kids. It starts with the kids, and we understand what they're doing with that. We've covered a whole heaping load of that stuff already. But they're starting to do it with adults now, with the inner development goals, which we've done an episode on that too. So if you guys haven't seen that, I got a video of it on my channel called the Inner Development Goals. Make sure you check that out. It has to do with educating the adults now, not just the kids. So this new normal isn't a catchphrase. It is a political and spiritual revolution of both children and adults to make sure that they get on and believe, not just go along with, but actually believe in this agenda, this mystery agenda that they're trying to put through. And this just is another proof point on this. Since they're so heavily trying to do it through education, Klaus Schwab has talked about it. What's his face? Harari has talked about it. Another one, Nita Farahani. If you guys don't know her, you seriously need to get introduced to her because she's just as evil as the other two I've talked about, but she just doesn't get talked about. Nita Farahani has said it. Bill Gates has said it. All the talking heads that we know that we're told to hate and dislike, they have all said it's through education. They make a specific point for education. Why is that? Why is that? We understand the new normal is about that, but where did that come from? Where did a new world view come from that it's about education? Remember how I talked about Alice Bailey, the mother of New Age? Remember how she had that vision that she claimed came from her ascended master, the Tibetan, which is actually a demon or mystery herself, where Alice Bailey said we are to bring about the one global order and the global religion through education. That was her main goal. That was her whole point. Her entire life was about that. The UN is doing the same thing. The WEF is doing the same thing. All these organizations, the 2 and 3 letter organizations that we know of, are doing the exact same thing as Alice Bailey. You think that's coincidence? That's not coincidence. That is somebody leading this. Helena Blavatsky, who created Theosophy before Alice Bailey, had the same belief. We have to bring this about through education. Alice Bailey, disciple of her, we have to bring this about through education. Barbara Marx Hubbard, who had the same vision, we have to bring this about through education. What is everybody doing? They're bringing about the exact same principles of spiritual and political points through education. Now tell me, who is leading all of this stuff? Biden? Get out of here. Klaus Schwab? Come on. The Rockefellers? Nah. The Rothschilds? Not even them. It's mystery religion. She is leading this. This is spiritual warfare. Several of the partners of the Earth Charter include a monarchy, Brazil organization. What do? They provide conscious evolution through leadership development. Kid you not. That's how they describe themselves. Through meditation practices, through spiritual development and conscious evolution, they will create better leadership. Kid you not. Go check it out. Don't take everything I'm saying here as stone faith truth. Go look it all up yourself. But stay away from Wikipedia and Britannica and all those frauds. Also involved, partnered with the Earth Charters. These are just some of them. These aren't all of them. These are just ones that I find interesting. China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. Center for Environmental Sustainability Education. The Club of Budapest. Oh, we'll get there. Trust me. Earth Child Institute. Interesting name. Forum on Religion Ecology. Wow. Martin Luther University College up in, I think it's Toronto, I think. But they're in Canada. Canadian land. Shangri-La Institute. Yeah. That's not something I necessarily cover, but if you want to know more about Shangri-La, go check out the Third Adam series from Spencer Smith. I believe it's the fourth one. He talks about Shangri-La. I think. Either way, go check out his stuff. Soka Gakkai International. We talked about them in the second episode, part 2. We talked about them and how they're involved with Mark Hubbard and the Awaken.com and all that stuff. Yeah, they're here too. And of course, UNESCO. Obviously, they're partnered up. That's just some of them. There's more. I think there's like 37 partners. That doesn't count their advisors and the people who are really running things that they don't want us to know about. But those are some of them. They're pretty obvious in what their focus is. Spirituality, climate, and education. And that seems to be the theme through all this, doesn't it? And coming up in 2024 is a very interesting conference from the Earth Charter. So if we take a look at this, 2024 Earth Charter Conference, reimagining, education for ecological civilizations. Again, this theme, man, this theme just keeps on going through. Train kept it rolling. I'll tell you what. So let's just kind of get an idea of what this conference is about. Remember, this is the Earth Charter, by the way. Stephen C. Rockefeller and Maurice Strong and Mikhail Gorbachev and all them. Our world faces many interconnected challenges, including climate disruption, biodiversity loss, increasing poverty, inequalities, and conflicts between and within countries. Education must play a central role in preparing people, here we go, to make the transformative change needed to create a world that works for all. Transformative change. This isn't about just go along with it. No, this is about believe this. The activities of the Earth Charter International Education Center highlight the importance of incorporating sustainability values and principles into the processes of learning and decision making. The center forges new paths in education for sustainable development, global citizenship education. What does that sound like to you? One world, maybe? And makes efforts to connect these concepts such as planetary well-being and ecological literacy. The center's work is implemented under the framework of the UNESCO Chair on Education for Sustainable Development, which, by the way, that's a organization that was created by David Rockefeller. We'll get back to that. Don't worry. With the Earth Charter, which works to generate educational programs and research activities specifically at the intersection of sustainability, ethics, and education. Just a couple more here. The UN organized a Transforming Education Summit, convened in response to a global crisis in education. Now we've got a crisis in education. One of equity and inclusion, quality, and relevance. Oh, those are the same talking points that the SDGs, also in the cell learning stuff, also with what the WEF wants to talk about. Kind of interesting how they're all the same talking points, right? It emphasized that many education systems are not providing students with the skills, knowledge, values needed to face the current challenges. The world needs to reimagine the education system, kind of like how Alice Bailey imagined it. The Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 4.7, aims for learners to acquire by 2030 the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including education for sustainable lifestyles, global citizenship, and here's a good one, climate justice. Why would they put justice on? Isn't that more of a humanity thing? Oh, that's right. We're all interconnected. Oneness with the planet. That's right. Gender equality, and so on. UNESCO's Futures of Education Initiative produced a report titled Reimagining Our Futures Together, a new social contract for education. It highlights the importance of considering education as, here's one of the words, guys, a holistic process involving the heart, hands, and mind. Go back to like the first 4 parts. If you guys don't remember, the first 4 parts of this series, and we go over how all of this is straight up New Age that comes from historical things like the 7 principles of the universe and Hermes Trismegistus, and even further back into Gnosticism, the world's first religion. This all comes from that. It promotes efforts to rethink content and pedagogy. I don't know on that one, sorry. And to support teachers as agents of change. And last but not least, the event will create a space to find synergies and enhance collaboration among innovative approaches to education for change, share experiences and research on innovative approaches, including lessons learned from the use of the Earth Charter in various education settings around the world. And these last 2 are the doozies. Expand our consciousness, understanding, and vision for reorienting education towards creating ecological civilizations. And number 4, provide training opportunities in using the Earth Charter to promote values and principles for sustainability and global citizenship education. Global citizenship education. One world order, global religion. It's right there. It's right there. Why are we talking about this? Why do we go over all this random history? It's over with and we're here, so who cares? What does this have to do with mystery religion. This history, these events, these people, these organizations are elements to mystery who is seducing the world to follow her religion. These organizations and governments are now preaching the same things all these religions are preaching. The governments are preaching the same things all these religions are preaching. The modern church is preaching the exact same things as well. These things that they're preaching are the same things Alice Bailey was preaching, that Helena Blavatsky was preaching, that Hermes Trismegistus was preaching. That's all history that has led us here. And what is here? Exactly as the Bible told us it was going to look. That's why we look at these things. We must know what we are fighting against. Not the Rockefellers, not the UN, not the Earth Charter, but the entity behind them. Or better yet, as Scripture would say, the entity writing them. If we are to not only defend against the spiritual attacks coming from all these things that the world wants to tell us are politics, but they're really not at the root. That's just the show that they put on. If we are to not only defend against that stuff, but then go on the offensive, not to fight it and bring it down, because the Bible tells us that ain't going to happen. That's not our role. Get in your lane, Jack. But go on the offensive to try and get people out of that and to Jesus. We have to know what we're going up against. And I say this all the time. And I know. But it's unfortunate that literally one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous thing against us as the church is one of the least talked about things, one of the least talked about subjects being discussed today. I mean, even the prophecy guys don't even want to touch this subject, but this is what is going on. This is leading everything. How do we not talk about the thing that is literally riding the beast in? How do we not talk about that? Is it just too big? I mean, we're on part 15 and we're not even close to being done. Spoiler alert. Yeah, it's big, but we got to know what we're going up against. We got to know what we're facing. You know what? I'm not a military guy. I'm not. But one of the things that I've heard from military guys, because I know several of them, is the most important thing that they have on the battlefield isn't their armor, isn't their weapon, isn't tanks or helicopters or anything. They said the most important thing on the battlefield is information. Because if you are equipped you're in your underwear with a shovel, if you know where the enemy is at, you have a way to get either around him or get behind him to take him out, even though you have nothing even remotely close to what he has to face. It's the information. And it's the same thing with what we're dealing with today. We are in this spiritual warfare, whether people want to admit that or not. I know that's a term that likes to get thrown around, but just like when in Matthew 24, Jesus says, do not be deceived. I don't think we even have a true understanding of what that actually means. We may think we do, but I don't think we actually do. Spiritual warfare right now, even in this very room that I am in, angels and spirits and demons and all these things, they're going at each other. They're all around us. We've got to have information to the best that we can right now to do the jobs that God told us to do in this time. Warn people of what's coming and get people to Jesus. And I just don't think that we are well equipped on the knowledge that we need to understand right now to do our jobs properly. We can do our best. We can absolutely do our best. I think we can do better. I'm not, waving my finger at anybody, even for myself. Because as much as this series is for you guys, it's for me too. You know how much stuff I'm learning by doing this? It's insane. It's insane. But we've got to be equipped. And that's why we talk about this history. You sit there and you can I'll be honest. When I first read the name Hermes Trismegistus, I laughed too. Like, you got to be kidding me. Then as I kept studying, I go, whoa, this is not anything that we should be laughing at. He was a very key cog in getting all this stuff going forward, because the same stuff that he was talking about, that he wrote on the emerald tablets, that all the people back then were worshiping and whatnot, is the same stuff that the UN is putting through there. It's the same stuff. It's literally the same stuff. That's why we talk about it. This is just me and you guys right now just talking, because this is really what's happening. This is really what's going on. It's mind-blowing. But we've got to know what we're going up against. It's not Biden. It's not Gates. It's not Klaus. It's not the Rockefellers. It's not the Rothschilds. It's not the Morgans. It's mystery. It's Satan. That's who we're going up against. Arm yourself for the battle. And again, the battle is not to take it down, because we know that's not going to happen. That's not our job. But we got to warn people. We got to get people to Jesus.